Hi, guys. The time lag on these messages is getting longer. Drop us a line more often, okay?
I'm Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I program a triple feature movie night. Each of the movies share common themes, and we discuss them here. We're happy you could join us for today's block we call Early John Carpenter. Taking a look at an artist's early work can reveal how their craft, style, and the overarching themes that drive them have evolved throughout their career. The Grindhouse team sets out to do just that in today's block as we take a look at all very early works by the great John Carpenter. We've got 2 shorts and a third short that was ultimately extended into a feature film that were all student films John Carpenter made during his time at USC. A repressed, geeky accountant by day becomes a vigilante by night, complete with a mask and underwear worn on the outside of his pants. He's a different type of superhero, not one who has heat vision or the ability to fly, but one who uses his powers for, well, peeping. This is John Carpenter's 1969 short film, Captain Voyeur. A lonely guy roams the city, but in his mind it's the Old West, a world where his loner persona is both accepted and romanticized. This 23-minute short film won an Academy Award in 1970. John Carpenter co-wrote, edited, and did the music for the resurrection of Broncho Billy. A group of truckers in space are called on to fly around the galaxy, blowing up planets and trying to stay sane while doing it. But what happens when the bomb doesn't want to follow orders? This down and dirty reimagining of 2001 became quite the inspiration for both Alien and Star Wars. Nick Castle plays a silent monster in John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon's 1974 debut film, Dark Star. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute. Please enjoy.
Commander, sir, we have a big problem. The Bale Nebula bomb, it's stuck. It won't drop out of the bomb bay. It refuses to listen, and it plans on detonating in less than 11 minutes.
You must tell me one thing.
What's that, sir?
How are the Dodgers doing?
Well, they broke up. They disbanded over 15 years ago.
Pity.
All right, welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute. I'm Brian Foster, and with me as always is Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
Well, I just want to say for the record, I'm not Sergeant Pinbag.
That's good, because that's one of my notes I wanted to address here, that part of the story. We have a very special episode with 2 very special guests. One, a returning guest, friend of the show. Jeremy, I'll let you do the intros.
Yeah, so we got 2 people here. First one, everyone's familiar with, my partner in crime here, Andy Buigues.
Woo!
Hey.
And then secondly, we've got debut on the show here. It's a
exclusive
multi-hyphenate, cinematographer, director, film lover, and I don't know, amateur film screener. Are we going to get you in trouble for that? I don't know.
No, I don't think
Patrick
so.
Cady.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Welcome, both of you guys.
Thanks, Brian.
Patrick, I'm sorry I didn't get to meet you in person the other night. I was way too tired. I just couldn't make it.
We'll have to have you to the backyard screening room some other time.
Especially to see this movie, which I was incredibly excited about. Today we're talking about early Carpenter films, very early Carpenter films. One of them, Captain Voyeur from 1969, a short film that he actually directed. The Resurrection of Broncho Billy, 1970, which he edited and did the music for. And then Dark Star. I have both 1974 and 1975 on this one. I'm leaning toward the 74. What do you have there, Jeremy? Because usually that's a point.
Yeah, it's always weird with sort of indie films
and
just release dates and whatever. But I mean, 74 is what they seems to be the consensus. I feel like the wider release was early 75. But
it was like 72. It was actually completed. It's for school, right? It's a school project we're talking about here.
So it gets complicated.
Yeah, it's first incarnation. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But and an exciting part of this was kind of a first for us here was like that we got to see it screened in 35 millimeter on an old drive-in print that Patrick just happens to own.
Yeah, and it's
a drive-in print. That's
it's
so
very
cool.
pink. Yeah, it's just beat up.
He happens to have a full 35 projector in his backyard. So
That's amazing.
Yeah, capable of surround sound if the print had it.
Yeah.
It's just in
listen
mono.
to Benson, Arizona, and surround sound.
It was a great experience seeing on the big screen, I have to say, because I watched a good part of it later on a much smaller screen, and it was just even with the aging on the print, it was just fantastic to see it, blown up on the screen and the music coming in, and it was a fantastic experience.
Whatever copy Jeremy has uploaded to Dropbox that I watched it on my 65-inch screen, and it was a really good print. Like it seemed like a great, was it a Blu-ray of that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It looks really great, and everything held up. I had not seen this before. This is one of the Carpenters that I never got to see, and I was not expecting to like it as much as I did, but this is like a really excellent movie in many ways, and I thought it was kind of a mix of like 2001 and like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And then it also had, I don't know if you guys ever played like, Dr. Strangelove for sure, especially with the ending. But, I don't know if you guys ever played like computer games back in the day, but there was one called Space Quest that was just like that, but you played as a janitor in space as opposed to like a trucker in space. And it was that same irreverent humor.
You got to play as Bill Frug, the engine technician.
Exactly. Yeah.
Posing as pinballs.
That's dead now?
Yeah.
Should we just get right into that point? Because is he really Bill Frug? Is that what's going on? Dan O'Bannon?
Apparently, that was the punchline of his story when they were all eating, nutrient paste or whatever in those things.
Yeah.
Ketchup packets and soy sauce. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was reading, I think that was a reference to one of their professors, which is kind of funny.
Oh, really?
Got it.
Like that's how the professor got the job?
But in this odd world of Dark Star, some people just die and are no longer there or taken over by somebody else, and then some others are in cryogenic freeze lockers where they can still talk and they can still interact with people.
So.
What kind of future is this? It's wild.
It's a future where you have to blow up unstable planets for some reason.
Yep.
For colonization, I guess.
Well, before they spin into the sun, right? I mean, naturally.
Yeah.
Right.
You wouldn't want that.
Well, they'll screw up the other planet that you're going to colonize later.
Right, yeah. There's one good planet there, so get rid of this nasty one that's going to cause an issue.
Not Jupiter.
Yeah, well, so this is this whole block is a little weird because it's obviously these are all movies that John Carpenter worked on in his USC days. Captain Voyeur, he sort of wrote and directed. Resurrection of Broncho Billy, as we talked about, he edited and co-wrote with a huge slew of people.
This also won an Oscar.
And also did the music, right? And they won an Oscar.
Yeah.
For it.
That's the part that was shocking to me.
Yeah, that's the most
I watched that movie and I was like, how many people wrote
Especially
this?
after watching it,
And
right?
then,
Exactly.
Right.
Wait
Yeah.
a minute, it won an Oscar?
Yeah.
What was it
like
up
a
against?
hot dog?
Yeah.
They came up with the Oscars before schools were actually teaching cinema? Is that what happened?
Right. And then we get to Dark Star, and is this written by John Carpenter or co-written by John Carpenter? Directed by John Carpenter. Music by John Carpenter. But strangely enough, it really, really feels a lot more like a Dan O'Bannon project.
It's like Alien.
Dan O'Bannon was a co-writer. The Star did a lot of the visual effects and whatever, but so
Edited it.
Production
very
design
much,
too, I believe.
Oh, and he edited it, right? And it's like, very much a collaboration between the two of them, and it's interesting how it feels much more like it's Dan's film than John Carpenter's film.
Yeah, I think the absurdist quality and the humor and the sensibility really feels like it's more in line with Dan's personality.
Well, and how would you guys know so well about Dan's personality?
Yeah, good segue. It's because he was a professor of ours in film school, and
What class did he teach?
So cool.
what was it called?
It was
Andy? I don't
called
remember.
Seminal Films with Dan O'Bannon,
Oh, right.
and it was one of the best classes that Jeremy and I had the fortune to take. Was basically Dan kind of just navigating us through, I guess, his favorite films, influential films, including Return of the Living Dead, So it was a great experience to watch that with him. And then it was just him talking about why these films were important to him and some of the interesting backstories to those films and kind of how they influenced him in his career. So it was really special to hear a lot of what the creative process was like when he was writing Alien and when he was working on the script for Total Recall, and obviously Dark Star and his experience in working with John Carpenter. So it was really, I was telling Jeremy, it was really great to see this documentary because I felt like
real quick, just like for context, so we watched this on the Blu-ray. There, they have a really long, like a 2-hour documentary. It's longer than the movie itself about the making of Dark Star.
Oh, really?
Yeah, called "Let There Be Light," which you should definitely check out.
Yeah, it's great.
I'd love to learn about the making of that film. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm about 70 minutes into it. It's pretty amazing.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, anyway, Andy, what were you saying?
Yeah. It was great to watch that documentary because it kind of gave you a sense of what USC was like at the time, the kind of creative environment that allowed for these collective of filmmakers to come together and work on probably is one of the best and most memorable student films then turned professional films in film history. And it was just great to see his contribution to the film and also just how much it meant to him and, all the love and care he put into preserving the film, keeping it alive in many ways in the release of the subsequent home video releases of the films. And, and introducing it to me who hadn't seen it and letting us have an experience of watching it with him. So it's great.
Yeah, no, and I think maybe we'll get into it a little more in a minute. I mean, and luckily Andy and I got to know Dan and what turned out to be some of his final years, and got to spend some time with him and his wife and their son. But you brought up a minute ago the sort of like experience of what it was like going through USC at the time, and I feel like if we want to start with some of the short films here, like that gives us like kind of a sense and a running start into Dark Star here. And Captain Voyeur, this
vigilante film,
1969
voyeuristic
movie.
Vigilante,
somehow wins everyone over.
Yeah.
Interesting little film here. I
mean, I feel like all three films in this block are going to be, caveats for people. It's going to be hard for people to watch. I mean, Patrick, Sammy, your daughter came out to watch about like exactly 10 frames, and it's like, yeah, I've had enough of this.
And then she saw me watching the End Again streaming, the Blu-ray. Uh-huh. And she was like, wait, the movie's not pink? I was like, no, that's that film. It's just really old, and that's why it's pink in the backyard. And she was like, oh, interesting.
So you have a legitimate drive-in 35 millimeter copy of this film, purpling and everything, or pinking.
Oh yeah, it looks horrible, and the reel changes or the perfs are all beat up at the reel changes.
I still wish I would have seen it. Yeah.
I can't figure out how to. For some reason, that night I couldn't figure out how to splice the reel so that the framing wouldn't like shift when the reel changes happen. So I'd run in and have to change the framing on the projector. So pivotal scenes, and then the frame goes like eek eek eek. It gets back into proper framing. And the film's framed oddly because they blew it up from 16. And hats off to the DP of Dark Star for shooting the whole thing on 16 reversal for blow up. It's insane.
Oh my God! Yeah. Well, according to that documentary, when they were talking to the DP of the film, Douglas Knapp, who I guess went on to shoot Assault and just like tons of stuff. But when they were first shooting it, they shot it as a student film. It was like maybe an hour long. They trimmed a little bit of that, got some money, got to shoot more scenes in 35. Put that all together and make it a feature. But the 16,
they actually didn't shoot the new scenes in 35. They they shot them in 16. The documentary at least said they shot them in 16 and blew them up to 35 to do the effects in 35. But to keep it consistent, they shot everything, even with the same like dumb Bolex lenses on the Bellew camera they were using. They shot everything. I love it. They shot everything 16 and just the second half when they had the money and knew it was going to be a feature, they just they started by framing. They framed for the 35 blow up and everything.
Oh wow.
And then they went back with the old footage but they blew everything up frame by frame and then did the effects in 35 because they wanted it to be consistent.
It's a lot easier to shoot the effects in 35.
I guess it's easier for them to look better in 35.
Well, because you're the extra generations you'd put onto it.
Yeah,
it would have the grain would be better if you're doing it that way. But yeah, but what was crazy is the 16. They shot it on Ektachrome reversal, ECO, and it was ASA 25. And when I mentioned that to Patrick the first time, his eyes popped out of his head.
Yeah, it was like, you freaking kidding me? That's insane. Why would you do that to yourself?
Right, and that's why in the documentary, the actor's talking about just being, burning from all the foot candles it took to light the film.
Yeah, and it's very bright too. Those interiors are blown out in some instances. They had to have been on fire.
Yeah. And I guess the
very slow
cryogenic
film.
room scene was he would turn away from the camera with a cool rag over his face to help try to breathe, because also the stuff they were using for the smoke is not anything we'd be allowed to use now. And then
kerosene vapor.
Yeah, kerosene vapor, right?
Which
like
can catch fire, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and probably burns your sinuses out. So yeah, and they wouldn't roll until Carpenter couldn't see him through the vapor, and then they would roll because the vapor would dissipate as they were shooting. And so he'd turn around, throw the damp rag on the ground, turn around and do the scene.
God, it was like four breaths, and then it was like cut. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, okay, so we've got a little far afield. Let's go back to Captain Voyeur real quick. And in this one, it's
were we just avoiding Captain Voyeur? Is that what just happened?
I think that may be what we were doing. Let's get to the one we all want to talk about. But Captain Voyeur, it's this 8-minute short film. Shot in 1969. It's like when John Carpenter was a film student there, and supposedly it was his first short film, which was kind of recently-ish uncovered in 2011, apparently.
Oh.
Which is how we're able to watch it right now. But what's kind of interesting is that, like, I think with all three of these films, I think this is what I was trying to say a minute ago. Got sidetracked, but like with all three of these films, I think there's sort of a limited appeal for most audiences, and there's kind of a more of an academic look at these things, and these first two in particular are probably academic visits only.
Very limited appeal.
You could get through, and especially if you get the right audience and everything, I feel like maybe even Sammy could have sat through the whole thing.
Oh, I think so. Maybe if she hadn't been out carousing all day and dancing all day.
I'm giving her a hard time. No, but the Captain
look, the
Voyeur,
kid loves Rio Bravo, so
yeah,
it's something
that's
right.
cool.
No, I'm always like
so should be a big
her.
fan of Assault on Precinct 13 then.
Yeah, there you go.
She
exactly.
might, yeah, she might have memories of us screening it in 16 here. I screened that once here.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, Captain Voyeur, it's like, obviously it's very, very rough. It's no sync sound, and that they're all filming on the seat of their pants and all this stuff. I think the most interesting part of it is looking at it and seeing the sort of like contours and sort of just the outline and the sort of baby steps to getting us to Halloween with this character.
Absolutely. That's what I thought of too.
The Voyeur character is very much the Shape, right? He's going around, staring at people having sex, and he gets shot at, but we don't get to see his body fall, and those things are all similar. He's wearing a mask.
Right. He's breathing heavily.
Yeah. The breath scene really did feel like Michael Myers breathing. Yeah.
I also feel like he's learning how to hard cut out of one scene into another, or start you in a sequence you don't know exactly what you're looking at. That there's that one shot where it's the blinds are drawn and the cord is in there, and you have no idea what the scale is until he shows up. Like, I was like, is that a rope or what? You don't know what anything is. And then in a film school way, you think of it and you're like, well, all the eye lines are like all the basic stuff that everyone gets wrong, he gets right, and you
That's
don't
true.
spend a ton of time thinking about how it's not sync. If the audio recording had been better and you didn't hear the ambient dropping in and out, you might not even question the non-sync nature of it. And that's, I remember from doing films like that when I was in undergrad. I did not do them that well, not as well as that.
Yeah.
And even though the subject matter of a complete peeping Tom is Oogie, it's still you see someone who understands film language.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
And to what Jeremy was saying, you also see him experimenting with the use of sound. For example, there are things that Captain Voyeur sees that are kind of played off his reaction, and we just hear like whatever was
The
going
beating
on.
of the woman beating the man in the S&M. You didn't see any of that, but you
Yeah.
heard that from outside, the echo in the hallway.
Right. Yeah, but the use of sound, which is something that I think makes Halloween so effective, which is
Yeah.
the sound design and using sound to both build atmosphere and also fill your imagination with what your eyes aren't seeing,
Yeah.
is stuff that you could see him already start to experiment with here as a student filmmaker. So that was really interesting. Like you kind of spot it right away, obviously, being so familiar with Halloween.
I always feel like a film is two-dimensional until you have that sound design, and then it becomes that 360
Yeah.
world built around you, And I think there are moments of that brilliance in Voyeur, probably much more than in Bronco Billy.
Yeah.
But obviously he didn't direct that one.
Yeah, I agree. That's one of the things that stands out is that whereas you could see John Carpenter elements in Captain Voyeur, Bronco Billy really doesn't feel like a John Carpenter film. And now I know Jeremy
Maybe
will
from a
eventually
music standpoint.
we'll eventually get to Dark Star and having a little bit of the same lack of feel that, maybe a traditional John Carpenter film. With Bronco Billy, it's just the overall subject matter, the approach, like Patrick was saying, the visual storytelling, the using your filmmaker toolkit to get, more out of a story than maybe what your budget allows. You didn't really get that feel,
To Carpenter's credit, I don't think Bronco Billy would have been successful at all had it not been edited properly, especially when it came to the sound design, because a lot of those worlds that the Bronco Billy, the main character, was walking into were just normal everyday situations. You go into a bar, you go into a store, but he had the old West Saloon sounds happening and like that, twangy music playing. And I think that's what really drove that home.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that sound aspect of it definitely kind of ties it with Captain Voyeur a little bit. It's like he has the same kind of like dissociative disorder where he's, like hearing different stuff than what's going on in the reality around him. He's weaving through traffic, and what you're hearing is like cattle,
Right.
Right.
stampeding and mooing and
Yeah, that's true.
all that kind of stuff.
Even though I guess the subject matter doesn't necessarily match what you expect from John Carpenter, there are those elements.
And I like the sharp cut at the end too. All of that became a reality finally. I mean, it could have still been in his imagination, but he was actually on a horse, with the artist woman that floats up onto the horse at the end and like all this stuff. And it was like he finally was in his real Wild West world that he's been building this whole time.
Well, I feel like the connection to Carpenter there, like, I mean, it's you kind of have to squint to see it, but it's really that this guy in Bronco Billy is, this sort of like hopeless romantic character, which is a very Carpenter hero, right? That's Laurie in Halloween. That's, Jack Burton. It's Nada in They Live. It's the guy with the mustache in Prince of Darkness. Right, and there's something like where all those like protagonists that he follows in those movies later in his career have this sort of like sort of doomed and hopeless romanticism about them, and very much so with this Bronco Billy character as well.
I guess that argument could be for Captain Voyeur as well. He was,
Yeah, I guess so.
He was trying to
maybe not quite as thoroughly expressed, but yeah,
a voyeuristic relationship with all these people.
Yeah. Well, it actually is interesting, like, comparing it to Halloween in the sense that, like, what he gets right and does so brilliantly in Halloween is getting it in the perspective of Laurie. Even though, yes, we do see POV shots of Michael Myers and we do see things that are not from Laurie's perspective, the story's perspective is from Laurie. And so what we're seeing with The Shape is like not him moving from, stalking window to stalking window, but rather like the effect of him just appearing, which makes it scarier.
Yeah, totally. I mean, are we moving on to Dark Star now? Have we talked enough about the short films?
Did we put enough time into this? Yeah.
I was actually going to put a caveat at the beginning of this episode and say we don't really have to get into these other two. We could really make this about Dark Star.
Sure.
There's this one thing we really want to talk about, and it's the sepia and Bronco Billy. No, or it's hammering one point over and over and over again.
Right, exactly. It's like
how long did that guy polish that Oscar?
Yeah, exactly. Bronco Billy's like 25 minutes long or whatever, and it's like obviously you got it in the first 4 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
But I guess one last quick thing on Bronco Billy, like it was the first whatever that is 17 minutes is just him kind of wandering around, and we see that he's not in touch with reality. He gets stopped by this woman who wants to sketch him while she's sitting in a park, and when he does that, he just starts like rambling.
You're just yelling at the screen. You're blowing it, dude.
He was so ahead. Yeah,
that's sort of
just nod
dramatic
and
irony there.
Take the drawing.
Oh, they got a different hat on. That's not the kind of hat they wear. Shut up.
Yeah.
Not all of them had horses.
And he forgets the dialogue he's been told. Right? He says that John Wayne wears a different hat all the time, and then he goes back to say he doesn't. He wears the same hat all the time. And they cut in both versions. I was just like, right. The editing will allow you to. Never mind.
Yeah, the quick one. No, it's funny because it's like, yeah, you're right. It's like, okay, you've got your in. Just take the W and start talking here. Like you don't have to like. But it's funny. Like as soon as he started talking, his voice, interestingly enough, really sounded like Norman Bates, which I guess
he had a resemblance.
It's kind of a more oblique reference to Halloween in that sense.
Also not in touch with reality.
Yeah, exactly. But, okay, well, we can move on from this. I mean, it is interesting somehow this thing won an Academy Award. And because it won an Academy Award, apparently it was, like, playing in theaters in Los Angeles, this Bronco Billy thing.
Yeah, I think they released it in front of, like, feature films, so it ran for quite a bit.
And did the director ever get any money from it, I wonder? Or did USC just pocket everything?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean,
was it a USC production? I mean, I know that it was, the filmmakers involved were USC students, but was it a USC production?
I think they kind of, in that documentary, they talk about it as a basis for then touch on what potential fate might have awaited Dark Star, that they owned.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's kind of interesting is like you see with Bronco Billy how there were like 14 different writers, Nick Castle and John Carpenter being two of them. And James Rokos got the directing credit. According to some of the people at USC at that time in that documentary that we keep referring to, they're saying like, well, a lot of the creative was kind of coming from all different sides.
Mm-hmm. So it's like a workshop class, right? Is that why everyone's got those writing credits? Is everyone's pitched into the script?
Yeah, I
don't know.
That part I'm not totally sure on, but yeah, it seems like it was something like that, where it's like, well, we just got this group of people together working on a film, and everyone's getting a little credit here. And in certain ways, Dark Star kind of feels like that, right? It's like all these people, and they're all just everyone's taking 1,000 jobs. Because the crew's so small, and everyone's helping to turn ice cube trays into like console buttons for the for the holodeck or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And
muffin pan tins. Yeah. For the space
exactly. And it seems like a very similar situation where we don't have these rigid job titles of like, okay, well, this person's the writer, this person's the production designer, this person's the cinematographer, and this person's the director. It seemed a little fluid. According to everybody in that Dark Star documentary, John Carpenter was very much the director, and there was like no question about that. but everyone was sort of contributing, like on all films, I'm sure, but probably more so on this one just because of how MacGyvered everything was with bubblegum and paper clips.
Well, just the sheer force of will to get it done, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
scenes being shot months apart and the whole thing taking years.
I mean, you could see hairstyles change. It's got that Evil Dead effect where people shot it like 2 years later or something. Yeah,
it reminds me very much of that sort of Evil Dead, those Evil Dead production stories where it's like instead of Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, it was John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon, and like that's why probably part of the reason that Dan is featured so much in the movie is because he was also there for all the reshoots and everything, whereas. What's his name? Doolittle and like Talby or whatever, like they kind of disappear for a little while there,
They got other jobs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
because they didn't want to come back and shoot the vertical elevator scene that was clearly on a floor. Yeah. But wasn't that stuff all added to make this longer and build that out? That whole chasing of the beach ball alien and all that, wasn't that like extra that they put together to make it a film? A theatrical film, I mean?
I believe so. I'm pretty sure that most of the sort of alien stuff was in the reshoots. I know for sure that scene where he's like playing the like glass bottles on the like art easels or whatever that as an instrument.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. that was added there to pad out the movie.
Do you think Coppola stole that for the kid drumming on the boat, in the PT boat? There's a little pause in the middle of Apocalypse Now where someone's drumming on something homemade. I'm going to say it's influenced by Dark Star.
It might have been. I mean, listen, the surfing guy, the surfing speech.
Yeah, exactly.
Hell, a 12-foot peak.
I know, that's a
Works
good
both
point.
ways.
That's a good point. Real quick, so going back to what you were saying, Jeremy, that I think is interesting is the resurrection of Bronco Billy. Like you said, it was also kind of creative with this like atmospheric collaboration where you got the sense that a lot of people participated in kind of bringing that movie to life. And I think that really does kind of set the stage for how John Carpenter, approaches Dark Star, because you still have that kind of collective and collaboration and kind of all hands on deck approach, with the main difference that he kind of established himself as director, so you could kind of make some final key decisions when it came to that. So it is kind of great to see kind of this evolution and have kind of that project probably led to how they approached Dark Star. I mean, in a way, they kind of went bigger with their student film and took longer and tried to tackle an even bigger project, which is great.
But I think it's interesting because you said that this doesn't feel like a John Carpenter movie. It feels more like the Dan O'Bannon Space Truckers. It feels like Alien more than anything. In terms of the production design and everything. But it's interesting to think that Carpenter, as a director, delivered what O'Bannon had written and delivered on the story of Dark Star, with that aesthetic, and was still able to accomplish that, even though it wasn't his, own written and directed style of like when Halloween would come out, Escape from New York, etc.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. The whole thing of like the sense of humor in it, like is very much Dan's sense of humor. This is kind of ties into one of our discussions where I don't know what it was last year when we did, what was it, episode 8 or something, where it's like we talked about how filmmakers would remake their own work, and Dark Star very much feels like sort of the first draft of Alien.
Well, yeah.
And in lots of ways, not just the sort of Alien, not just the truckers in space, but I mean, even down to like the space suit, like the helmet. Look, I mean, the way that like the like neck brace leads to the sort of like fishbowl on top, like that. Production design wise, like almost like one for one came over into Alien. Mother, the computer, like and the sort of like the evil talking bomb, and like the way that Mother like disregarded their life. But it's interesting because the Dan O'Bannon version of Alien, like the script that he put together, is even closer to sort of the Dark Star world. Like the way that the characters would interact with one another, and how they would just constantly be messing around and get into these like gag situations. His script for it was a lot closer to what this one was than what it ended up being. It got some rewrites, and then Ridley took it over and made it the sort of dark horror movie that it we all know and love. But sort of as originally conceived, it was sort of kind of more on the Dark Star spectrum,
like on the comedy spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, like even some of the dialogue felt not quite as goofy as this one, but kind of in that same vein.
Right, the banter.
Yeah.
Which makes it all real, right? That makes those people real. It gives them all a relationship. These guys have known each other on this 20-year mission, haven't aged at all because they're in warp bubbles in order to travel at light speed or whatever. The science is behind this, but these guys are kind of on like a mission where they're just kind of be left out in space, really, when you think about it. Like, no one's going to really expect these guys to come back, and they're all going nuts. But the fact that they deal with each other, that, you know how long they've been out there just from the way that they interact with each other.
You could definitely see the influence, how much the film was influenced by Dr. Strangelove. I mean, it's kind of like...
yeah.
I mean, the ending for sure. The surfing.
Yeah, but not just there. The pilot's stuck on the bomber without communications on a mission where, they've just got these instructions, that are relayed to them with this huge delay, and they're kind of on their own. And even using the music at the end as...
Is this the Benson, Arizona one?
Riding the surfboard into the exploding planet,
But those were the satisfying moments in the writing, though. They mention all that stuff, Doolittle's talking to Talby is the hippie in the dome.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And he's talking about, he's like, I just want to catch another wave. I want to surf again. He ends up surfing again, and then Talby wants to hit the Phoenix asteroids or comets, and he does, and it's just like he's like, they're taking me with them. And I just wanted to know where the hell he was going, It was cool.
It's those character payoffs, right? It's the idea that even if they don't do anything, if you know who they are, if you have a sense for who they are, and they're consistent in the story with who they are, then you want to see what happens to them, even if they don't blow up the Death Star. You know what I mean? Like, you just care about them.
Yeah. It's funny because
it was a Death Star, right? Like, it was destroying planets.
Yeah. No,
like,
totally.
it's
like,
well, the I think there's a good case to be made about how the influences that this movie had on subsequent films. I like, Patrick, your reference to Apocalypse Now. That's actually a pretty good one.
And the other one, my favorite is the Blade Runner with the eyeballs.
Yeah.
Right.
We're so happy you found us.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really fascinating to see, and then they talk about in the documentary just how influential 2001 was, for Dan and John Carpenter and a lot of the student filmmakers at the time. I mean, it was so groundbreaking. So you see a lot of that influence there, but then you see a lot of the influences that Dark Star had on, like, George Lucas when he was working on Star Wars, and
even just the idea of a gritty spaceship, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Lived in world.
Spaceship is before this.
Because 2001 was so clean, right? So pristine.
Yeah. Right.
This one was trashed. Like it would be after 20 years. Yeah.
It's not a giant, huge sphere that has plenty of supplies for everyone.
Forever.
They're cramped in a tiny space because I have no idea how the documentary talks about too, about the number of bombs and the size of them.
Yeah,
compared
it
to
just doesn't.
Exactly. Are they being manufactured like
exactly
ad hoc?
made in the ship?
Well, I love how the bombs have. They've been programmed with intelligence.
Yeah.
So you have to reason with them.
Yeah.
Go talk to the bomb.
Phenomenology.
That might be technology we may not want to pursue.
Yeah, exactly.
Self-aware bombs.
When we said smart bomb, that wasn't what we meant.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, totally. I mean, obviously this did have an impact on Star Wars. I mean, there's definitely the story that George Lucas, this is before Star Wars, but I think after THX, but like Dark Star is being filmed, and over the course of a long time, they had different screenings. George Lucas definitely saw it, and he hired Dan to work on Star Wars to do some of those like targeting screens based on the work that was in Dark Star. So he definitely saw it. The hyperdrive thing, apparently, I mean, I like to me, it seems like maybe Star Trek might have done this first, but
Yeah.
you know, I don't. Apparently not. Apparently in the '60s Star Trek, they didn't quite have the thing where it's like the streaking space,
Yeah.
and they didn't have the ship do the streaking as well, and that was very much like something that definitely came into Star Wars and became well known
I was
for
pretty
that.
blown away by those effects. The stars coming at the screen were awesome. That side shot of the profile of the ship with all the like warping, stars, I thought was incredible. I thought it looked great.
Totally.
It's so good. I love how it just stops.
Yeah.
and that's a lot like the random generator in
Yes, in Hitchhiker's Guide.
Hitchhikers is what I thought of, was that like boop, and then they just shoot off this field that kept them from becoming
Turn into yarn.
mush.
Yeah. How does the physics work there?
Well, don't think about
They
it too
fly
hard.
through the nose of the
exactly.
ship. And die.
Yeah.
But they did kind of get into the science, though, of stuff. They did say that in order for them to travel at those speeds, they needed to be like frozen in that warp bubble, and that's why that one scene when they're all just kind of rocking out, like mannequins for a second. And that's why they haven't aged too. They mentioned, which I thought was really smart.
Yeah, I mean, but that's one of the things I love about the movie is just from a production design and in just filmmaking, just how resourceful, and it's got really that kind of scrappy student film approach. I mean,
But
like
they're still thinking about it. They're not thinking about the stuff they're going to just get away with.
right.
Yeah.
Seeing it on the big screen, like you really see how great the like cockpit scenes are, and just how much the production design really pays off, even though it's like ice trays and the things that they built it with. But they were, and I think this is like where you see the influence on John and Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon's careers, is just this ability of like using the filmmaking techniques available to you to get more mood out of a scene, and get you like really sucked into it, where you don't need to look too closely enough, but you kind of get enough to like get into the scene and really just be moved by what you're seeing.
I love that thing when there's a big emergency and suddenly there's all those whip cuts inside that tiny cockpit and they're all just doing stuff.
Yeah.
It was so well put together.
Yeah, well, that too, like right before that happened, there's sort of two dolly push-ins. There was like on the computer door, and then we get inside the computer room, and it looks so much like what would later be an Alien with the mother computer, and then that almost that exact same shot. And then you're right, you get into the sequence where it's just like really frantic, like, hey guys, my circuits, I can't deal with this. You have to manually do it. What?
We got 30
we gotta
seconds.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, just a couple other little notes on the Star Wars, what seems to be Star Wars influences. I mean, like, obviously the mission that these guys are on is to go around blowing up planets. So that sounds like Star Wars. Yeah. And the name of the ship is not the Death Star, but the Dark Star.
Similar. Wow.
Not even close.
Yep.
Yeah, not even close. Not even close. The lawyers reviewed this one, and they said not even close.
Fine.
Yeah. And then, I don't know, there's nothing really specific, but like there's just something about the look of that elevator shaft scene that feels a lot like the sort of like escape from the Death Star sequence in the first Star Wars.
I definitely thought of them, of Kenobi coming around
The
that
big
thing.
shafts that they're going over, and
that's all
silos.
Throwbacks to Forbidden Planet. That's the first movie I think did that. Like, oh my gosh, I'm in this man-made thing that's huge, and I could fall down, and man-made canyon.
No, totally. That's not a ship. It's a plane. Oh, whatever. I'm screwing up the line.
Is that not a moon? That's a space station. Is that what you're trying to say?
There you
go. That's not a ship. That's a Dark Star.
And then the RV Spaceballs goes by.
Yeah. We break for no one.
I mean, just think, without Dark Star, there'd be no Spaceballs, okay?
Yeah. Right. That's the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, another great thing about the movie that I had forgotten about is the title sequence song, which was pretty great. Benson, Arizona.
Arizona.
Yeah, which again, like it has that kind of absurdist clash in tone quality that Dr. Strangelove has in its closing sequence.
So that's where I felt a lot of Hitchhiker's Guide, because Hitchhiker's the main theme of it's kind of this country twang, when the title screen comes on and everything, and that's it just doesn't match in the best way, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
There's a moment where the computer makes a sound that made me think of the movie version of Hitchhikers too, where there's like it sighs or something. And I was like, oh, it's like the Doors in the.
It's funny though. I think just because of so the movie comes out, it plays in a couple theaters. I think their premiere, and they got everyone at the film school and all our buddies to come out and see it, and like, you know, it brought down the house and everyone was excited about it. And then, you know, it gets this rollout. The marketing to me seems brilliant. Like what was the tagline, Andy? It was
They're not lost in space. They're loose.
yeah.
Really? That was the tagline?
It's so fucking awesome.
I think it's one of them. They had a lot of good ones, but that was a great one.
But it's like, you know, okay, well, they didn't connect with an audience, and, you know, the movie just, like, you know, tanked financially. And, like, when sort of looking at it in the rearview mirror, you know, I guess both Dan and John were, like, disappointed in how it didn't launch their careers the way they had hoped it would. And, you know, so both of them kind of, at least, you know, several years ago, had kind of a negative impression of the movie because it just didn't perform so well. And Dan called it something like...
It was disappointing, really. You know, we had what would have been the world's most impressive student film, and it became the world's least impressive professional film.
And it's like, you know, I feel like John Carpenter said something similar about it. But it's interesting, like, to me, it feels like, you know, this sort of like perfect sort of, you know, cult film.
Oh yeah.
Movie, and it kind of has a lot of that.
But you don't know it's a cult film until much later, right? Like that's
Right.
the thing about the cult. It needs to have that evolution of.
Yeah, and I guess in a way, like, this is like the perfect John Carpenter movie, because most of his movies, including some of his best movies, like The Thing, bombed. And no one liked them and didn't appreciate them at the time.
Perfect movie.
Yeah, it's next to perfect. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then it just you know, gets recognized for what it is, at least by everybody except for Dan O'Bannon. But
wait, The Thing?
Oh yeah, he apparently he didn't like it.
Is it he doesn't like the structure of it, or?
I think it just had to do with, like, you know, after this movie, he and John Carpenter had a falling out, just sort of, you know, parting of ways creatively and everything. And I feel like that may have influenced that opinion. You know, he also, like, The Thing from Another World, the 50s version, the sort of Howard Hawks version, is one of his favorite films. And, you know, so maybe that had something to do with it as well. Like, you can't touch this you know,
why are you going after
object
this master?
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, but he made it better. I think you can prove it on a chart, and it's like, mathematically it is better. So
that story is going to be made yet again. I think Blumhouse is producing Who Goes There. They're actually doing the short story, directly from that.
That one I'll have Dan's opinion against the new one, because it'll be, you know, I don't know. I imagine it's going to be really, really hard to top.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, the thing is, you think of, we're talking about the tenacity and the can-do spirit of making something like Dark Star, which, I mean, until you've tried to make any movie of your own of any size and actually finish it so people can see it, you have no idea how insanely hard it is. And then you just think about the special effects alone in the thing and how it almost kills the
Botine.
Yeah, and he's really young when he's doing those effects, and you know, but
he's sent to the hospital the day they wrap.
Yeah, but it's a calling card for the rest of his life. I mean, I don't know. I think anyone who, you know, any student I ever do a workshop with or something who starts complaining about, well, I don't have the right, you know, I'm going to be like, watch Dark Star.
Right. I know.
Think of the free things you have on your phone and the computer you have at home. And stop complaining. What are you shooting this weekend?
They had to make you with a beach ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they gave it character.
When I brought you on the ship, I thought you were cute.
But the first time I saw that thing, I was like, oh, God, it's a beach ball. And then within seconds, the sound effects that it made, the way that it moved,
the little hands
I was sold on it. Like, I was like, oh, yeah, it's there, it's a real thing. And they gave it character, which, again, the resources that they worked with, they made it seem much more than it really was.
Yeah, and it's knowing how to tell a story.
Yeah,
You feel like it was a jumping off point for Dan too. I think he kind of perfected the thrills of the alien attack sequence with the face hugger in Alien.
Good call.
Yeah, right. Because him stalking, Pinback stalking the ball, especially at that last part when he's in the little boiler room or whatever.
Now it's time to go sleepy bye, you worthless piece of garbage.
God, how much did that feel like? Not John Hurt, Harry Dean Stanton's
Harry
character.
Dean's, yeah.
Kind of wandering around looking for the cat, you know what I mean? It's
looking for Jonesy, yeah.
You're like, Jonesy's not the thing you should be looking for.
yeah. Hey, buddy, I might want to turn around.
Jones.
But, yeah, I mean, I think you're right about just talking about the sort of, tenacity that they were able to pull this thing off the way they did. And imagine shooting what would amount to like an hour-long TV episode and being told, hey, you need to cut maybe 10 minutes of this and shoot another 30 minutes.
The best problem to have as a student filmmaker.
Totally. But and how do you make sure that you extend the story by making it more engaging and not just making it longer.
Available.
Yeah, and not having all the characters available too. Exactly.
Yeah, and even with their limited resources, what's just really great is that they were able, and I guess this is what makes it a really great film, especially a student film, is just they were able to double down on the resources they had available to them that can make the film seem really impressive, and see what they accomplished with all the models and all the visual work that went to creating the kind of space sequences. And they were able to add enough story to kind of keep you engaged in the film itself, and kind of, like Patrick, you were mentioning earlier, like just kind of wrap it up at the end, and that resourcefulness just shows you, like, I think Dan's sensibility really lends itself to it, because they were never going to be able to make something as polished as 2001. So like taking it the absurdist route and playing up the comedy, right, and
the dirtiness of it,
going with the truckers in space instead of the computer scientists, astronauts in space, was just like a really creative way of approaching something that allowed them to pull off something greater than you would imagine at that scale.
No, exactly.
I have to do a quick shout out to my undergrad longtime friend Ty Bradford, who was one of the producers of Space Truckers.
Oh, really?
Really?
Right on.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I've never seen that movie. That's a Dennis Hopper one, right?
Yeah.
I've never seen that, but it's got a great cast, and that's one that I think we need to fit into the show at some point.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Figure out a block for that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a long string of working class schmoes getting caught in an adventure.
That sounds great.
We'll partner it with Outland.
Oh,
That
yeah,
was another one that was
Outland.
kind of
That's a
like-
great one.
Which one's out? Is that Sean Connery, Outland?
Yeah.
That's Sean Connery and Peter Boyle doing Truckers in Space.
They're like cops on a moon, right? A moon
but
of
it's
Jupiter.
mining.
Yeah.
It's actually
They're
kind of
like mining, yeah.
It would go well with Alien too, because they're mining in space.
Or Total Recall, like the opening scene of that.
Right.
Is the opening
Yeah,
scene of Total
exactly.
Recall. Anyway.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
So what, in your knowing Dan for so long, what's an overriding, what drove him to keep making movies? Like what's the thing he's trying to work out or perfect, do you think, in his storytelling?
That's a good question. It's funny because he's known best for Alien, and just to sort of like sci-fi and horror and stuff, and obviously those are things that certainly motivate him and get his creative juices flowing. But it's like his sensibilities like tended toward this like humor, and you really see that here, and sort of the absurdist stuff, like making it sort of like this somehow a hybrid of things you'd never think possible, of like Dr. Strangelove and 2001 coming together. And I guess you do see that in the first movie he got to direct, which was Return of the Living Dead, right? It's like the combination of sensibilities there, of like well, he's the horror guy, so do horror. But he also is going to make you have a good time while you're there. And,
Did he write Return of the Living Dead as well?
Yeah, so he's credited with the screenplay. Apparently the story was credited to some other folks, including John Russo, the other creative voice behind Night of the Living Dead, besides George A. Romero.
Yeah.
No, I remember loving when I saw that the first time. I was just, because it gave you permission to laugh at how crazy it was and still be scary at moments. And then there's a dog cut in half that comes back to life. And you're like, what the hell is going on?
But I think Dark Star does the same thing. Dark Star has incredibly tense moments, scary, and most, the music that's done, the discussion, even though it's strange with the computer, totally reminded me of HAL 9000, right?
Yeah.
It was this same trying to reason with something that's could be a lot smarter than you and you can't reason with it. And so like trying to like turn it on itself, like, well, why do you know you exist? This is just a bunch of numbers being thrown at you, right, to tell you that you exist. But I thought that those scenes were actually scary, and they like delivered on them. So I think that there is a nice ride that he takes you on. O'Bannon, I mean.
Yeah, and the abrupt realization that you thought you were in control, and oh wait.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I think his sense of humor really comes through in Dark Star too. Like one of my favorite scenes in Dark Star is when Pinbag has all his like logs. He records his logs, and you're just kind of seeing the evolution of him kind of losing it in space, and now he's trapped. That was just so funny,
But there was like so much more to that too. That every swear word that he would say was censored. Every gesture that he said would be censored. So there was some other, government or something that was this world building that was done. That like this is. These guys can't do anything, even though they're in space busting their ass and going nuts for 20 years.
for Demolition Man.
Exactly,
too, right?
like that's what I was going to say. Like, you have been fined 1 half credit. It's like same kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think what comes through, if you think about just all, his scenes in the film and the comedy and the kind of intensity that he brings to them is like, you just get the sense and that he just has this like, kind of love and enjoyment of films, and that he understands that to some degree, kind of no matter what the genre, you kind of have to have fun with it, right? And I think a lot of that came through as we kind of took this class where he kind of shared with us a lot of the films and why he appreciated them, and that's something that really has always stuck with me, because it's in a way it's taking what you get from films and what makes you appreciate them and all the fun you have, and bringing that to the films themselves. And it's in a way, it's like giving back the enjoyment you get with the love for film. So I thought that's really great. And another thing, I think, Patrick, going to the creatively, and it's great to see that he got his directorial debut with Return of the Living Dead, but it was interesting to see from like a writing perspective the detail with which Dan would kind of approach a lot of these choices that you sometimes might chalk off to like just being part of like genre like specific, right? So it's like I remember him thinking like a long time on like how can I create like essentially recreate the beach ball alien in the Alien script, and thinking like what could be the scariest possible like interaction with an alien, and thinking like the face hugger getting stuck to your face like that, and then having this alien just like ripped from your chest, like the amount of thought that he brought to that was really just fascinating, because you see the effect of that, right? You see like how much goes into some of these decisions, whereas with some lesser science fiction films, you just think like, oh, people just ran with whatever idea they had, or just whatever they've seen before.
You get crawl, right? You get just surface stuff.
Yeah, and again, his love for some of these films that influenced him really came about. Like you see this in Dark Star, and you see this in Alien, which is this idea of like, I remember him talking about like what makes like a great space film, or like what is kind of the inherent tension that makes like a film about space so interesting. And it's like the confined space, right? It's like I see a lot of parallels with the submarine movie, which I like so much. And it's this idea that you can't run away from the things that are constantly threatening you. And so
Yeah.
not only do you have to battle the elements,
and it's a way to like ratchet up the stakes.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Not only do you have to battle the elements, which themselves are enough of obstacles in a lot of space films, but like now you add this element of like a foreign creature or an alien being thrown into the space, and now you got yourself a real horror movie. So a lot of those sensibilities and just the kind of thought process that and the detail with which he approached what might otherwise feel like genre details was really interesting.
So what did maintain an alien that O'Bannon created? I mean, you mentioned the face hugger. Was that in the original script as well, and how the alien would come out of the chest and everything?
Yeah, that was in there. It's just it was like the things that kind of changed in the movie itself were a lot of just sort of like specifics on like the dialogue, and these were miners and sort of blue collar workers in space, but they didn't have that sort of hierarchy divide the way that it was expressed in the movie, where it's like everyone gets the same amount of shares, and well, what about us? We're doing more work, busting our ass down here, and da 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 da. Like that dynamic wasn't exactly there, but structure-wise and everything else, it was kind of built the same way. I mean, like, and in fact, like the things that they shot and took out of it also were in there as well. Like Ripley finding Tom Skerritt. It's sort
in
of
the
a famous
nest
deleted scene. Yeah, exactly.
Cocoon.
We find out that he wasn't dead, and he was getting ready to be the face hug. He's in sort of that cocoon thing that we end up seeing in Aliens.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that scene was in there as well. They took it out of the final Alien movie for pacing, which, you needed that because it's like it was on her way to get to the little shuttle. She like takes this detour and finds him.
Right.
It's like
stops
no.
dead. Yeah.
I can't do that. Let's have this be one journey.
Jeremy, do you remember if Evan Holmes' character was in this original screenplay?
The android?
I don't remember off the top of my head. No.
It's interesting because you have his mother and the android, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
The computers were not our friends in Alien.
Definitely not. And not in this one neither. It's think about him having to argue with the bomb.
I like that they just called him Bomb. His name was Bomb. And every bomb was Bomb. The next guy was Bomb.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think they come into consciousness only when they get lowered out of the ship?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm alive now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I love when he has the philosophical lecture with the bomb.
Yeah.
It's just the guy floating in space, and I love that he has to go outside in space to have this lecture.
Yeah, exactly.
He has to talk face to
face.
He has to go eyeball to eyeball.
Eyeball to eyeball. You can't stay in the ship.
How much did you guys laugh when Talby got jettisoned out of that ship, though, and they showed like the little body fly out into space?
And just like,
again, it's a little bit like 2001, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It's the same shot. It's just it's a lot less scary. Like in 2001, when they just like pull all the audio, and it's just like it's so scary when it's happening.
I was going to ask, when you were taking classes with Dan, was there a movie he had you watch that surprised you? Was there some non-genre or something that you were surprised that was on his list of things to learn
that's
from?
a good question, man.
And Andy, you said something about sub movies. Was that something he introduced you to, or something that you just personally like that, trapped in the situation?
I mean, no, I don't think. No, I mean, I think I remember we watched the Thing from Another World, and that was one of the elements that was very influential, is this idea of this group of scientists stuck in a snow station, which, also works really well in the John Carpenter thing. The sub movie is just kind of
Don't tell Dan that.
The sub movie is just kind of a parallel that I always found, just because I really like the space movie, but much like the submarine movie, there are some kind of basic rules that you have to adhere to. I think Danny Boyle tried to push the envelope a little bit with Sunshine, which I really loved. But you have to.
Which, by the way, do you remember the name of the bad guy in Sunshine?
Doolittle?
Don't. Was it Doolittle?
Pinbacker was the name.
Really?
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's an awesome reference.
That's
I
wild.
did not remember that.
And
You
it
mean
was definitely
the other
a
scientist that
tip
was
of the cap.
the other scientist
Yeah,
that was
the
stuck in
Mark
space?
Strong character.
Yeah, Pinbacker. Wow, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Or I didn't remember that. Yeah, but there's just some things you have to respect about pacing and how you build tension and
Oh yeah.
that are just great. It's much like in the submarine movie, right? You're kind of confined a little bit by the physics of it, but there's just something inherently tense about being confined in this space where when one little thing goes wrong, you really can't run away from it.
And it forces you in your script to develop characters. You've got to get all this exposition out without it feeling like exposition at the
Right.
beginning, and then you have to have things build up. And
Yeah. The one thing I remember from the class with Dan is that there was a lot of discussion. I remember at one point he was sharing with us, I think, like a rough draft of like a book he was writing on screenwriting. Do you remember that, Jeremy? And there was a couple of chapters. It was really interesting. And so there was a lot of exploration on like some great films and like some of their shortcomings, like his issues with like The Abyss, or I know we were talking about even like Eyes Wide Shut and things like that. So it was really interesting to see some of the
I have a
details.
multitude of issues with Eyes Wide Shut.
But
it's an unpopular opinion, but I don't call it that.
Yeah.
So did Dan apparently.
All right, I'm in Dan's house on that one.
Yeah, he was he was like, Kubrick's lost it. He's what did he say? He's like he spent too much time in England, and you can tell because on when Tom Cruise opens up the newspaper and finds out the headline where the girl died, it says something like the next headline down was something about the drugs war. And he's like, yeah, in America you say drug war, not drugs war.
Wait, that's what he grabbed on?
Yeah. Exactly.
Movie's got bigger problems than that.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need to spend 2 hours watching an old man's sexual fantasies,
I think that, yeah. I think you just pointed out that like that was sort of a microcosm for what was wrong with the movie.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't enjoying it when I noticed that they were using the same graffitied mailbox in different streets, and I was like, noticing that there's a problem.
I think that's what he was pointing out too, is that there was a level of artifice, I think, in the production design that he could that it was kind of hard to get past. Yeah, exactly. Which I don't have that problem when I watch the movie.
What I argued with him about that was that like, the movie is supposed to take on this sort of dream logic and have this sort of like, mind's interior perspective, and I think that weirdness about the mailboxes over and over again and these like sexual fantasies and all these different things are emblematic of that, and in that sense it kind of works. I think on the one level where you're supposed to accept it as these things being real, that doesn't work, but because it doesn't work, it also makes you try to have to examine these other things.
But if it wasn't made by Kubrick, would you be putting yourself in the pretzel to answer those questions? That's the thing I always bring up when I start getting in arguments about this movie. If it was made by Bob Smith and it was his first movie ever, you'd be like, wow, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
But you got to get yourself a writer.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how it had come up too, but we ended up having conversations about The Abyss, and it is really interesting to see like how much The Abyss borrows from like Alien and from
that's right. Yeah.
Like even Dark Star in a way. Yeah. And they, it's kind of a combination of miners underwater instead of, truckers in space.
Truckers underwater. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were miners, weren't they? Weren't they digging into the trench?
Yeah.
Wait, they were young? No, dad joke. Random podcast dad joke.
But so it was like a lot of that. I mean, wasn't Facing the Crowd one of the movies, Jeremy, too, that we watched?
Yes.
And that's one that you wouldn't think, but
you never seen that?
No.
Oh, you haven't seen it? Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah.
No,
and that's also an interesting one because it's a performance by Andy Griffith that you wouldn't really expect. It's actually really great.
He plays a really kind of evil to the core, kind of like, or a very flawed human being, right? If I'm remembering what I've read about the movie.
He plays more of a simple person that gets corrupted, I think, a little bit by fame and the eventual power that he comes to wield as a result of a kind of like a burgeoning media empire.
We should all watch this movie now, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it would be a great double with Ace in the Hole.
Ace in the Hole.
Right.
One of your faves.
Love that movie.
But that was one of the films I think that stood out. That was wonderful to watch. But yeah, I think just the takeaway was for me was just a lot of the detail that went into these. Even in the script for Total Recall, which ended up being vastly different than the Arnold movie that actually came to be, but there was this kind of also appreciation of the source material that was great.
Yeah, he was a huge fan of Philip K. Dick and would constantly talk about like and a very contrary and unpopular opinion haver, like things like he didn't like Blade Runner and stuff like this.
Well, it's funny. I watched Blade Runner with my daughter Samantha, and at a certain point she's like, "Wait, he's in his underwear and he's breaking through the ceiling? What is going on?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. I love watching it."
Which version were you watching? Maybe that's part of it too.
The non-voice.
Let's have this conversation.
Let's revisit that. I think we could reference the Blade Runner podcast for that.
Nice. Yeah, we were watching the non-voiceover version. I started showing her To Live and Die in LA last night, and she was pretty hooked, but tired. And she wanted to watch this other thing we're watching. So we just watched through the opening sequence.
If you want bread, fuck a baker.
we hadn't gotten there.
Okay.
I think that's that and the opening music, I think, are the best things about the film.
I prefaced it with, I'm going to show you the most 80s movie you're ever going to see. And especially with these opening credits. Yeah. She's like, wow, they're just going for it. I was like, they were serious. So there's no, For some reason, I started watching that, just the beginning, and then I started watching Thief again, which I hadn't watched in a while.
Well, that's the place to take it, I think, is Thief or the movie William Peterson did right after that, Manhunter.
Oh my God, love that movie.
But I think for a future 35mm screener, if we can get a hold of Sorcerer, I think that would be a great one.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen Sorcerer all the way through.
Oh man, that one is really underrated.
Yeah,
because we've screened the 16mm of the French. The first movie.
French Connection?
Yeah. No. The movie Sorcerer is based on.
Wages of Fear.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another.
That was another one.
That was another one we watched.
Thanks for the reminder. Yeah.
That was one of my favorite films. Like so, so that's another film that we watched with Dan O'Bannon, and again, it was kind of a similar. Like he kind of showed us why he liked the original a lot better than he liked the remake. So it's kind of very, very. On par with the conversation with The Thing. So,
was there any remake he liked more than the original, or any later version of the same?
Yeah, I don't.
Premise.
Well, I don't. I don't remember actually.
I mean, normally what it would be is he would have a spicy take, and then we would just sit there and argue with him.
That sounds like a fantastic class.
Yeah, that does sound like a great class.
Yeah.
Well, so some of this is on personal time too, so it's kind of getting lost there. But I mean, like the whole argument over Eyes Wide Shut and even The Thing was something we had in his den or whatever.
Yeah. Wages of Fear was a great one though, because it's interesting. Like Wages of Fear is actually really great too. It's interesting. It's like I feel like they both hold up. With Sorcerer, it's just like a wilder, more visceral ride in a way, and
Well, and it starts off in a way like you don't know where it's going. It seems like French Connection. It seems like just like this crime film, and then it turns into this other like experience. It's wild.
Right.
Oh, cool.
It's got a kind of crazier structure because it kind of opens with like these vignettes that kind of set up the characters, but are kind of like loosely tied to like what ends up being essentially the same setup as Wages of Fear. But the setting is a lot different, kind of going through the jungle and, very similar, but they did a great job of, and then just what that production was and what actually happened, and the elements in which they shoot is just amazing. So,
well, it was definitely Friedkin's Apocalypse Now. It's like one of those like, things that sort of like from then on his career, he's maybe more of a director for hire.
Yeah, but it's funny that we came back to that, because that was one of the films that I was thinking.
But a great movie that was overshadowed by Star Wars, right, at the time. It didn't.
Absolutely, it came out like a week after Star Wars. So it was like, you know what? I think the population's going over this route and not over here.
Really, they don't want to spend time in you were crazy.
But think about it. It's like
world.
The movie comes out in '77, right? It's right after French Connection, huge success.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, after French Connection and Exorcist.
Oh yeah, so the guy's on fire.
And
Roy
it
Scheider's
stars
in it, right?
the star of Jaws,
Yeah.
right? It's like, how is this movie not a success?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
so the studio threw money at him.
Yeah.
You know what I do notice isn't in that movie that was in the other two is Owen Roizman. I mean, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying.
Right.
As a fan of Owens.
Yeah,
Oh,
but that's actually funny because one of the things that kind of contributed to The Sorcerer, probably not doing as well as it could have in theaters, is just they decided to call it Sorcerer, and I think it was the name of one of the trucks, and really was just like trying to go off of William Friedkin's track record with
The Supernatural?
The Exorcist, but really Wages of Fear is like a much more applicable title, and so people showed up to Sorcerer thinking that there's going to be a lot more supernatural
magic.
When's the magic happen?
Yeah.
Why are they
and it's like, no, that was just the name of the truck.
Where's Merlin?
One of these guys is getting possessed, right? Like that's going to happen, right?
His head's going to turn around all the way at one point.
Yeah, no, it is interesting.
I think just to kind of bring us, rein us back in here to the other side of the spaced out Odyssey. What was so interesting? Obviously, this movie was, like we said over and over again, influenced by 2001 and Dr. Strangelove. Interestingly enough, okay, so the opening shots of this are kind of taken straight out of the opening sequence with Hal. Like by the time we get to the Hal section of 2001, we start with this sort of like quick documentary on what Hal's up to and who he is and whatever, and like we're hearing these long delayed updates to the crew from back on Earth. And what's interesting is like they essentially did that same shot here in Dark Star to open the movie and kind of set the stage. But what's kind of crazy is like that scene where the whatever he is, the captain or whatever, who's in charge of this mission, he's talking to the guys on this 10-year delay or whatever it is. But behind him are those sort of like representations of a computer at the time, which are these like sort of reel-to-reel tapes in these giant like cabinets, which is also the opening shot of Captain Voyeur.
Yeah, it's a nice
thing I
nice
noticed.
tie-in.
Yeah.
Which, okay, and one thing we didn't mention in Captain Voyeur when we were trying to skate past that one real quick was how the opening like 2 minutes while we're in that, it opens in a sort of a computer lab, and there's a secretary walking around, and there's a bunch of accountants and whatever, and one of the accountants is a creep and kind of staring at her butt. And while we're looking at this, we're seeing this imagery of this reel-to-reel computers, and we're hearing this sort of disembodied sound. And the combination of those things, like the reel-to-reel things and the like sort of different noises that don't seem to be diegetic at all, very much reminded me of THX and sort of like how those two things would happen. Like to make it seem sort of otherworldly, they made the sound kind of just off-center type of thing.
Which is like all you hear in the background in Star Wars too. It's almost like a weird like talking like. Yeah.
Well, they were
totally.
obvious. The documentary talks about them being, obviously, very influenced by THX, or at least kind of setting the bar as something to aspire to for that kind of generation of filmmakers.
Yeah, exactly, and similarly, that's what Dark Star ended up being almost. It's like, with George Lucas, he shot a short film and then took that premise and expanded it into a feature of THX. But in Dark Star, they took the short film and actually just added on to it to make it a long film.
Yeah, it'd be like if the original student THX was inside the feature version.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Anyway, but it is interesting. Like I love kind of exploring someone who became so influential, to myself, obviously to you, Brian, as well, John Carpenter and some of his early work. And, how Dark Star kind of fits and doesn't fit into that body of work as well.
And I think we're going to do a sequel to this show next time. Our next show is going to be the early John Carpenter Part 2. We're going to be doing Elvis, which I know I've seen, but I can't remember much of it. Assault on Precinct 13 and Someone's Watching Me.
Elvis.
Yeah.
Are these
Kurt
the
Russell?
TV movies that he worked on?
Yeah. I should have said that with an exclamation. It's actually Someone's Watching Me.
Yeah. There you go.
That'll be our part 2 to the early Carpenter films before we start getting into hopefully some of his later work, which we grew up and love.
Well, yeah. So the kind of the idea with the second part here is to have movies that he did. These are movies he directed, but ones that he directed before Halloween came out. So Assault and Someone's Watching Me, he shot before Halloween. Elvis, he shot directly after Halloween, but it wasn't out yet, and he wasn't John Carpenter TM, Mr. Horror.
Right.
And so it'll be interesting to kind of see what, sort of pre-brand name, John Carpenter works are like.
It's a great idea.
Thanks for joining us, guys. It was great to discuss these films with you.
Thanks for having us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was great.
We'll have to
Can't
do this
wait for the
again.
next one.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's think about the next one we're going to do. If it's Space Truckers, I'm in. Let's just try to pair it with something cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good one.
I can send out the list of 35 millimeters I have access to. We can play with.
We can build a block based on 30.
Yeah.
We're actually doing this film thing for real. This is
I
great.
own a print of Darkman.
Ooh,
nice.
Hell yeah.
That's here. I know you could get into early Raimi, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Which
definitely.
is worth doing.
Yeah.
He has the power to look like any man, but he is unlike any man. From director Sam Raimi. Darkman.
Patrick, where can people follow you or see some of the work you've been putting out there in the world?
Well, you can search for me on the social things with my name, Patrick Cady, Cady is the last name, or Cine Cady, CineCady. And then if you have Amazon Prime, I suggest you check out the fabulous show Bosch, which had its final season dropped just this last year, and I directed half the episodes. And then
Amazing.
On IMDb, they're going to be coming out with a spin-off of Bosch where he's it's a spin-off. That's all I'll say because you should watch the other season first. And I just finished directing 2 of those episodes.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That was my best Lance impression.
Yeah.
So one thieving politician trumps 22 dead bodies. Good to know.
All right, thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next week.
Ciao.
I just want to say that I am not Sergeant Pinback. My real name is Bill Frug, and I'm a fuel maintenance technician. Pinback's uniforms do not fit me. The underwear is too loose.